All right. We've talked so much about Bill 96. We know some of the things in it. Every time this comes up, though, I feel the need to mention there are like 202 articles in this bill, which is still why they're going over this. But we know what happened with English CJEPs. We know about the search and seizure issues in here. About the part about bilingual municipalities. But then, correct me if I'm wrong here, BENY MASELLA, what we did not know necessarily is that if Bill 96 passes as is, there is an amendment in there that would allow the Justice Minister, the government, to withhold subsidies from cities not in compliance with the language charter. So, first of all, can you explain what that means? BENY MASELLA is the mayor of Montreal West. He's also the head of the Association of Suburban Municipalities. Benny?
Good afternoon, Aaron. Thank you. You're right. We're talking about Article 114, and it's an amendment that they've put in, that they've introduced. And the idea is that if you are not respecting Bill 96, the Minister of Justice can then either directly or cause other ministers to withhold some grants that you've been awarded. So, in other words, if for whatever reason you make a small mistake and they find, some computer that has an English version of some software, and you're supposed to have the French version, they could actually say, oh, well, the grant I give you for your road, well, you're not going to get that right now. And yes, that seems extreme. And the government has said, oh, no, well, that's just like a last resort. But they haven't said that in Amendment 114. They've just said that if you're not in compliance with Projet de la Loi 96, they can withhold your funding. And that's major. That's major in effect.
Again, this seems to me to be another one of those issues where it's so vague, and as you mentioned, there are no details here. What would constitute you not following the charter? I imagine that's the most worrisome part. I mean, if you knew what it applied to specifically, you could then say, well, it should or shouldn't apply, or we can live with that, but you don't, do you?
That's exactly right. And it's so broad that if they would have had more details in there and they'd say, no, after you've done this and then we've tried to get you to correct here and you've done this and you still haven't complied, then this could be the effect. But that's not what they're saying. They're just saying in that Amendment 90, in that Article 114, they're saying that if you don't comply with this, with Bill 96, we can withhold your funding. That's very broad. Yeah. And that gives a lot of broad powers to the Minister of Justice, and he can direct any other ministers that have awarded you subsidies. That's detrimental. We rely on these subsidies to redo our infrastructure, to repave our roads, change the piping under the ground. We rely on these things all the time, and for something minor, we could jeopardize those grants that we receive. That's problematic.
So trust me when I say the last thing I want to do here in any possible way is defend Jolin Barrette. However, if I understand correctly, it's not something that would just, and I'm not making it okay, but the idea is not that it would happen one day to the next. Didn't he say something to the effect that it would be a gradual thing, you would get a warning, be given time to correct things, and then perhaps it would come to the extreme situation? And again, I'm not defending him, but there would be a process, a due process to follow, would there not?
Absolutely, there should be a due process, but by that same token, then define it as such in the article or in the amendment. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That they haven't defined it; they've just left it so extremely broad that it's very, very problematic and it's open to interpretation. If they've defined it very, very clearly, I'm not happy with it. But then at least you know the règle de jeu. You know what you're up against. But the way it's phrased right now, it's not defined at all. It's very, very broad. And it's discretionary power that's problematic. That touches on the autonomy of the municipalities in general. How do we go about issuing calls for tender if we run the risk of losing our grants to redo the pipes under a certain street? That's extremely problematic.
I will say what you just said, though, and you have to wonder about this. There's tremendous overreach involved in here when the Justice Minister can make decisions that don't even have to necessarily do with his department, as you said. You're getting grants from different, parts of the government, yet the Justice Minister wants the right to walk in and change those grants based on what it is you do or don't do, Bill 96?
That's exactly
right.
Crazy. That's the part that's problematic. I use the expression, you're trying to take care of a fly with an elephant gun. It's so heavy-handed that it's just hard to comprehend how it can be left as such. It needs to be reworded, need to define it, try and give some context to it. There's no context at all right now. It just says if you're not abiding by this, the minister can withhold grants that they've attributed, or they can ask other ministers to withhold grants that that they've accorded. That's very far-reaching.
Now, last week, I think it was the end of the week, the Association of Suburban Municipalities denounced this, right? You sent out a press release denouncing this. I wonder if there's been any response since that denouncement.
Again, the word we've had from the minister is similar to what you were saying before, Natasha. There will be, it won't be the first recourse and everything like that, but that's fine. But put that down in the paper, and that's not what's written down there. And it's not just the Association of Suburban Municipalities that have denounced this. The Union of Quebec Municipalities and the Federation of Quebec Municipalities are two organizations that between them they cover 100% of the towns in the province. They've come out and said that this is problematic as well. It's not just the ASM. They realize that this kind of overreaching, ill-defined parameters is problematic and can be troublesome for many municipalities. It touches on our ability to run our towns properly.
So I wonder one other thing. Do you have any input? I mean, you're a group of suburban mayors. What input have you been invited to a commission to discuss this? The amendments in Bill 96 as they would directly affect you?
No, well, we deposited, the ASM deposited a memoir at the time, and our memoir at the time spoke about maintaining bilingual status and the problem we had with, I remember at the time they were saying that if we give a contract in our town and there happened to be an English version of that contract that existed, the government could come in and cancel the contract. And we said, that's problematic. Wow. I said, if there's a contract that's provided, an insurance contract, an insurance policy that's provided by Lloyd's of London, and it happened to come to us in English, and we asked for them to send it to us in French, and now there's an English version sitting there, the government could come in under Bill 96 and actually cancel that policy. So we said, that's problematic. And so we've made our representation at the time when they were studying it. And now, as they're going through every one of the articles, well, surprise, here's an amendment to Article 114 that's now popping up. So now we've expressed our opinion. We're not there to voice our opinion in person. We had that chance when we deposited our memoir. But at that time, 114 wasn't written like that. This is an amendment that's popping up now.
Do you feel like your municipality has bilingual status?
Yes.
I'm wondering, do you feel like that almost puts a target on you?
I don't know if I would go that far. I have to be honest with you, Natasha. I don't know if I would go that far. But it's just that when I look at what the possibilities are, that's the part that's a little bit problematic for me. Even a town that doesn't have bilingual status, but they happen, again, I use that same version. They happen to have an English version of some software sitting there because it happened to be sitting there from 10 years ago. Well, they could run into the risk. Yeah. I don't know that we're necessarily more targeted because we're bilingual municipalities. Just this overreaching power is problematic.
By the way, BENY, do you even know or do you have an understanding of how search and seizure might work as it currently applies in Bill 96? Can they just walk into any suburban office just because they feel like it? Do you have a clue?
Apparently, and again, I'm not exactly sure on the modalities. From what I understand, they will have powers to be able to come in and say, we want to inspect, again, I'll use that example, we want to inspect your computer systems. And then they can go through and we have to make sure that it's all French software that's on there, no English software that's on there. That's the kind of thing that's problematic. And the part that's also problematic, it can be because somebody makes a complaint that may or may not be well-founded. Somebody could make...
as the law exists the same way now, right? Anybody can make a complaint.
Well, and that's what makes me think that they'd be more likely to be looking at bilingual status municipalities than those that are not bilingual. What next? Now what?
That's the question. Now, we've expressed our concerns. We're hoping that some of the other people that are in the meetings right now, some of the Quebec Liberal Party, the other opposition parties, realize that this is a problematic amendment, and they'll take up the fight and try and have that changed.
Well, I wish, I hate to say it that way because it sounds so hollow, but I mean, I wish you luck. Just every time I hear someone talking about Bill 96, and you're adding sort of this new layer to it today, by virtue of what the minister is now suggesting could happen, I'm more and more concerned. And, given what's happened so far with the Liberal Party, who we thought would sort of, be standing up and defending these issues, and that's apparently not happening. How can you have any optimism here at all, BENY?
It's very, very gray outside. I'm sitting here and I'm looking out the window and it seems sunny, but it's really, really gray outside right now, Aaron. When I look at this kind of stuff, it's a little bit depressing. And listen, I understand the government wants to do what it can to protect the French language. I understand that. But I always say you cannot do it at the rights of the English language. You want to try and promote usage of the French language? I get that. You just can't do it at the expense of the English language speaking people.
Yeah.
And what a shame. Like, you don't have better things to be doing. You know, you've got a job to do. You're kind of a busy guy. Like, you need to be bothering with this. Good.
Not just me. You can duplicate that across the board. Everybody has better things to be doing than to be worrying about this. But we have to be vigilant, because these are the kind of things that sneak in. And if you haven't paid attention to it, if you haven't raised the flag, it's the kind of thing that 5 years from now it can come back and bite you in the behind.
Well, thank goodness the flag is being raised, because it's going to have to be raised, and it's probably going to have to happen over and over again, or this kind of, I hate to use the word hoodwink, but it's starting to seem that way. They try to sneak through as much as they can and hope nobody will notice. So good for you and everybody else, all the other suburban mayors, for noticing. BENY, thank you so much for the time. Appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thank you, folks. Have a nice day.
You too. BENY MASELLA, head of the Association of Suburban Municipalities. Just kind of insane.
It's infuriating.
Wow.